She walked the same route through Central Park every morning at 6:30 a.m., a quiet woman in her 40s leading a pack of 7 dogs belonging to Manhattan's wealthy elite. When she spotted the glint of metal in the apartment window overlooking the president's motorcade route, Rachel Martinez had exactly 43 seconds to prevent an assassination that would change American history forever. Welcome to Hidden Legends. Before we begin this powerful story of vigilance, training, and split-second decisions that saved nations, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they are. Rachel Martinez was the kind of person New Yorkers walked past without seeing. At 6:30 every morning, she emerged from her small apartment on West 82nd Street, carrying 7 different colored leashes and a worn canvas bag filled with treats, waste bags, and water bottles. Her clients were Manhattan's elite: investment bankers, Broadway producers, Supreme Court clerks, and tech executives who paid premium rates for someone reliable enough to care for their prize-winning dogs while they traveled or worked 14-hour days. Rachel charged $75 per walk and maintained a waiting list of potential clients who had been referred by veterinarians and satisfied customers. She had been walking dogs professionally for 6 years, building a reputation for punctuality, discretion, and an almost supernatural ability to manage multiple animals simultaneously. The Golden Retriever belonged to a federal judge, the German Shepherd to a UN diplomat, the Beagle to a network news anchor. Each dog had specific requirements, particular routes they preferred, behavioral quirks that Rachel had memorized and accommodated. What her clients didn't know was that Rachel's attention to detail came from 12 years of training with the United States Secret Service, where noticing everything and forgetting nothing could mean the difference between a successful protection detail and a national tragedy. Rachel had resigned from federal service 3 years ago after what the official records called burnout from high-stress assignments. The truth was more complicated. She had been part of the Presidential Protection Division, one of only 47 agents authorized to work directly with the first family. Her specialty was advanced security, the meticulous process of securing locations before presidential visits. She had walked through hundreds of buildings, studied thousands of sight lines, and memorized the tactical vulnerabilities of venues ranging from elementary schools to foreign palaces. Her eye had been trained to spot threats that others missed, to calculate angles and distances with mechanical precision, and to think like someone planning to harm the most protected person on Earth. But after 12 years of living with constant awareness that failure meant catastrophe, Rachel had reached a breaking point. The hypervigilance required for presidential protection had begun affecting her sleep, her relationships, and her ability to relax even during off-duty hours. She requested reassignment to a less critical position, was denied, and ultimately submitted her resignation. Dog walking had been intended as a temporary job while she figured out her next career move. Instead, she discovered that spending hours outdoors with animals provided the peace that years of therapy and medication had failed to deliver. The work was simple, predictable, and completely removed from the world of threat assessments and emergency protocols. For 3 years, Rachel had successfully avoided thinking about ballistics trajectories, escape routes, and the dozens of ways a determined individual could harm a high-value target. She had found contentment in routine walks through Central Park, satisfied clients who trusted her with their beloved pets, and the anonymity of being just another service worker in a city full of them. But some training never fades, especially when it's been reinforced by years of life or death situations. Tuesday morning began exactly like the 847th mornings that had preceded it. Rachel collected the dogs from their respective apartments: Max, the Golden Retriever, from the judge's penthouse; Luna, the German Shepherd, from the diplomat's townhouse; Buddy, the Beagle, from the news anchor's high-rise. Each pickup involved brief conversations with doormen who had learned to expect her precisely on schedule. By 7:15 a.m., she was entering Central Park through the 81st Street entrance with all 7 dogs walking in perfect formation. Rachel had spent months training this particular group to move together without tangling leashes or creating chaos when other dogs approached. The morning walk covered 2.8 miles through carefully selected paths that provided adequate exercise while avoiding the most crowded areas where conflicts with other pet owners were likely. Rachel's route was methodical, but appeared casual to observers. She followed the same path each morning, stopping at the same locations for the dogs to rest and socialize, timing her walk to avoid both the early morning joggers and the later crowd of tourists and families. To anyone watching, she was simply a professional dog walker who took her job seriously. What observers couldn't see was that Rachel's route had been designed with sight lines in mind. Every stop provided visual access to multiple potential threat positions. Every turn offered escape routes should emergency evacuation become necessary. Every pause allowed her to scan surrounding areas with the systematic precision that had once been used to secure presidential venues. She didn't consciously think about these habits anymore. They had become automatic responses developed through years of professional paranoia. Her eyes continuously tracked movement, noted unusual behavior, and cataloged details that most people would never observe. At 7:43 a.m., Rachel was approaching the Great Lawn when Luna, the German Shepherd, suddenly stopped and oriented toward the building line on Central Park West. The dog's behavior was unusual, alert but not aggressive, focused on something specific rather than generally curious. Rachel followed the dog's sightline to a residential building approximately 400 yards away. Through her mental catalog of Manhattan geography, she knew the building housed expensive apartments with direct views across Central Park. Nothing appeared unusual about the structure itself, but Luna's continued attention suggested something worth investigating. Rachel moved to a position that provided better visual access to the building's facade while appearing to let the dogs rest and drink water. Using techniques learned during threat assessment training, she methodically scanned windows, balconies, and rooftop access points for anything that didn't belong. That's when she saw it. A brief glint of reflected sunlight from a sixth-floor window, visible for perhaps 3 seconds before disappearing. Glass doesn't reflect sunlight in that particular manner unless it's being moved or positioned deliberately. The reflection had the characteristics of optical equipment, binoculars, camera lenses, or rifle scopes. For the first time in 3 years, Rachel felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that accompanies threat recognition. Her training kicked in automatically: assess, verify, report, respond. But there was no backup team to contact, no command post to notify, no immediate response protocol to implement. She was just a dog walker who had noticed something that might be nothing, or might be everything. Rachel maintained her casual posture while mentally calculating the tactical significance of what she had observed. The building's 6th floor provided clear sight lines across Central Park to multiple high-value locations: the Metropolitan Museum, the Reservoir Running Track, and most importantly, several routes commonly used by official motorcades traveling between Manhattan locations. She checked her watch. 7:47 a.m. In her mental database of New York security protocols, she recalled that Tuesday mornings often involved official movements related to United Nations sessions, federal court hearings, and diplomatic meetings. The president was scheduled to be in New York this week for UN General Assembly meetings. Rachel moved her group of dogs to a different position that allowed continued observation of the suspicious window while appearing to follow her normal routine. The dogs sensed her increased alertness, particularly Luna, whose training as a diplomat's security dog had taught her to respond to handler tension. Through careful observation, Rachel confirmed her initial assessment. The window in question showed signs of preparation consistent with surveillance operations, minimal visibility from street level, restricted access to the room behind it, and optimal positioning for observing multiple approach routes across Central Park. More concerning was what she noticed about the building's security profile. The structure showed characteristics of temporary occupation rather than permanent residence: minimal window treatments, limited visible personal belongings, and the kind of sterile appearance that suggested professional rather than domestic use. Rachel's Secret Service training had included extensive education about threat patterns, and she was observing several indicators that matched assassination preparation profiles: elevated position, concealed observation capability, temporary occupancy, and proximity to known official travel routes. But without official status, communication equipment, or backup support, she faced a dilemma that would have been unthinkable during her federal career. What to do when you identify a potential threat but lack the authority or resources to respond through official channels? She could contact local police, but explaining how a dog walker had identified a potential assassination threat would require revealing her background and might delay response time if her assessment was accurate. She could call the Secret Service field office, but without current credentials or insider knowledge of ongoing operations, her call might be dismissed or deprioritized. Meanwhile, if she was correct about the threat, time was critical. Professional assassination attempts relied on precise timing, and the presence of optical equipment suggested active surveillance of target movement patterns. Rachel made the decision that her training and experience demanded she would maintain surveillance while finding a way to alert appropriate authorities. But first, she needed to confirm that what she was observing represented an actual threat rather than innocent activity that appeared suspicious due to her heightened awareness. At 7:52 a.m., her confirmation arrived in the form of movement at the window, brief but unmistakable, the profile of a rifle scope being positioned for optimal targeting. Rachel's throat went dry as she processed what she had just witnessed. The shadow behind the window had moved with practiced precision, adjusting equipment with the efficiency of someone who had performed these motions countless times before. The rifle scope's positioning indicated preparation for a shot that would travel across Central Park toward Fifth Avenue. She checked her watch again. 7:54 a.m. Presidential motorcades typically moved through Manhattan between 8:30 and 9:15 a.m. when traveling from hotel accommodations to UN headquarters. The window's sightline aligned perfectly with the route most commonly used for high-security official movements. Rachel faced the reality that she might be observing preparation for a presidential assassination attempt, and she was the only person in position to prevent it. Her dog-walking routine had placed her in the right location at the right time to notice details that hundreds of other Central Park visitors would miss or dismiss. The dog sensed her tension and began showing signs of agitation. Luna, the German shepherd, continued to orient toward the building, confirming Rachel's assessment that something significant was happening in that location. The other dogs grouped closer to Rachel, responding to her elevated stress levels with protective positioning. Rachel needed to act quickly, but she also needed to avoid alerting the potential assassin to her surveillance. Any obvious change in her behavior, sudden departure, visible use of communication equipment, or attention from law enforcement could trigger an immediate acceleration of the assassination timeline. She made her decision based on 12 years of Secret Service protocols: prevent the attack through direct intervention while simultaneously alerting official response teams. Rachel began moving her dogs toward the building on Central Park West, following a route that would appear natural to observers, but would position her for optimal response if her assessment was correct. As she walked, she pulled out her phone and composed a text message to a contact she hadn't used in 3 years, Agent David Chen, her former partner in the Presidential Protection Division. The message was brief, but used coded language that any Secret Service agent would recognize as a legitimate threat alert. Possible longbow situation. CPW/81st 6th floor, Eastern exposure. Moving to verify. Martinez. Longbow was internal service terminology for sniper threats. The location reference and her use of her former operational surname would immediately identify her as a credible source despite her civilian status. She sent the message at 7:57 a.m. and continued moving toward the potential threat location, knowing that she now had perhaps 30 minutes before official motorcade movements would begin, and placed the president within range of whatever was being prepared in that apartment window. Rachel's phone vibrated with a response from Agent Chen. Location confirmed for POTUS movement 0845. Response team 12 minutes out. Maintain safe distance. Do not engage. The message confirmed Rachel's worst assessment. The president was scheduled to travel through the exact area being targeted, and official response would arrive too late if the assassination attempt proceeded on accelerated timeline. Professional assassins typically maintained contingency plans for early execution if they detected law enforcement response. Rachel continued approaching the building while maintaining the appearance of a routine dog walk. At 8:02 a.m., she positioned herself near the building's main entrance, where she could observe both the sixth-floor window and street-level access points. Through careful observation, she identified additional confirmation of her threat assessment: a rental vehicle parked in a position that provided rapid departure access, temporary license plates that suggested recently acquired transportation, and the kind of sterile appearance that indicated professional rather than casual use. Most significantly, she observed a second individual in the building's lobby, a man who appeared to be providing security or communication support for the primary threat. The presence of multiple operatives suggested a sophisticated assassination plot rather than a lone individual acting impulsively. Rachel calculated that official response teams would arrive approximately 10 minutes after the presidential motorcade began moving, creating a window of vulnerability that a professional assassin could exploit. She needed to disrupt the attack without alerting the operatives to law enforcement response. She made the decision that her Secret Service training had prepared her for direct intervention to protect the president's life. At 8:06 a.m., Rachel secured the dog's leashes to a streetlight and approached the building entrance with the confidence of someone who belonged there. Her years of accessing secured locations provided the body language and manner necessary to pass casual security screening. She entered the lobby and approached the man she had identified as a potential accomplice, using a technique learned during counter-surveillance training. Create a distraction that appears accidental, but forces the target to reveal operational details. "Excuse me," Rachel said, approaching with the manner of a concerned resident. "I think there might be a gas leak in the building. I smell something unusual from outside, and I'm worried about my dog." The man's response confirmed her assessment. Instead of showing normal civilian concern about a potential gas leak, he displayed the controlled reaction of someone whose priority was maintaining operational security. His eyes moved toward the elevators, then to his communication device, before focusing on Rachel with the assessment-oriented attention of a trained operative. "I haven't noticed anything unusual," he said, but his body language indicated heightened alertness and concern about potential disruption to planned activities. Rachel had learned what she needed to know. This was definitely an operational team. They were maintaining communication, and her presence had introduced uncertainty into their timeline. Professional assassins relied on controlled environments, and any unexpected variable could force them to accelerate, delay, or abort their mission. At 8:09 a.m., she heard sirens approaching from the south, Agent Chen's response team arriving ahead of schedule. The sound confirmed for the operatives that law enforcement had detected their presence. Through the lobby window, Rachel saw the man in the window begin rapid equipment breakdown, attempting to clear the firing position before official response could confirm the threat. The response was swift and professional. Agent Chen's team secured the building within 4 minutes, apprehending both operatives before they could complete equipment disposal or evacuation. The sixth-floor apartment contained a high-powered rifle with scope, communications equipment, and detailed surveillance materials documenting presidential movement patterns. Rachel found herself in the familiar environment of post-incident debriefing, answering questions from agents who recognized her reputation and training. Agent Chen, now a senior supervisory agent, led the interview with professional courtesy, tempered by obvious curiosity about her civilian circumstances. "How did you identify the threat?" he asked during the formal debriefing. Rachel explained her dog-walking routine, Luna's behavioral alert, and the systematic observation that had revealed the suspicious activity. She described the tactical indicators that had confirmed threat assessment and the decision-making process that had led to direct intervention. Your identification prevented what post-analysis confirms would have been a successful assassination attempt, Agent Chen informed her. The operatives had detailed intelligence about presidential movement patterns and were positioned for optimal shot placement during motorcade transit. The investigation revealed that the assassination plot had been planned for 6 months, with the operatives conducting surveillance and preparation while maintaining civilian cover identities. Rachel's intervention had disrupted the operation at the critical execution phase, preventing a national tragedy. "We could use someone with your observational skills and tactical judgment," Agent Chen continued. "The service has developed new positions for experienced agents who prefer non-traditional operational roles. Consulting, training, threat assessment, work that utilizes your expertise without the stress factors that led to your departure." Rachel considered the offer while watching through the window as her 7 dogs waited patiently by the streetlight where she had secured them. For 3 years, she had found peace in simple routines, caring for animals and avoiding the hypervigilance that had once consumed her life. But today had demonstrated that her skills and training remained sharp, that she could still identify and respond to threats that others would miss, and that her experience could protect lives in ways that transcended official job descriptions. "I'd like to keep walking dogs," she said finally, "but I'd also like to know that if something like this happens again, I have people I can call who will take me seriously." Agent Chen smiled. "I think we can arrange both. Consulting position, flexible schedule, and direct communication access for threat reporting. You'd be surprised how many situations benefit from having trained observers in civilian roles." 6 months later, Rachel Martinez still walked the same route through Central Park every morning at 6:30 a.m., leading the same 7 dogs belonging to Manhattan's elite. But now she also carried a discreet communication device that provided direct access to Secret Service threat reporting, and her observations were part of an expanded civilian awareness network that enhanced presidential protection throughout New York. The dogs still sensed her alertness, but they had learned to recognize it as protective rather than anxious. Luna, the German Shepherd, had received special commendation from her diplomat owner, who had learned about her role in detecting the assassination threat. Rachel had discovered that serving doesn't always require wearing a badge or carrying official credentials. Sometimes the most important protection comes from people who notice what others miss, who trust their training when situations demand action, and who understand that keeping people safe is more important than recognition or status. The president never learned that a dog walker had saved his life during a Tuesday morning walk through Central Park, but Rachel knew, and that knowledge provided the peace that had eluded her during years of official service. Sometimes the most important work happens quietly, performed by people who choose purpose over recognition and use their gifts to protect what matters most, whether that's the leader of the free world or 7 dogs who trust their walker to bring them safely home. Thank you for joining us at Hidden Legends. If Rachel's story moved you, remember that heroes often work in the shadows, using skills developed in one profession to serve in completely different roles. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from, and who are the quiet guardians in your community? Until next time, keep your eyes open. The next person who saves your world might be walking past you on the street, watching carefully, ready to act when the moment demands.